The autumn sun hung low over Windsor Castle, casting long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard. Thousands of tourists lined the iron gates, cameras ready, excited whispers filling the air. They had come to witness the changing of the guard, a tradition as old as the crown itself. But no one expected what was about to happen. Among the guards stood Private James Harper, 23 years old. Tall and steady in his scarlet tunic and bearskin cap, his face was invisible beneath the towering black helmet, his expression hidden from the world. He stood perfectly still, as he had been trained. Eyes forward, shoulders back. Not a single muscle moving, but inside, his heart was racing. Queen Camilla stepped out of the royal car. Her presence commanded attention immediately. She wore a pale blue coat and a delicate hat with white feathers. Her smile was practiced and polite as she waved to the crowd. The people cheered. Phones lifted into the air. Flashes sparked like stars. She walked slowly across the courtyard, escorted by royal aides. Her heels clicked against the stone. Everything was going exactly as planned. Until she stopped. She stopped directly in front of James. Her eyes narrowed. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Something had caught her attention. Something about this particular guard before you continue watching. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this one. Now, back to what happened next. Camilla leaned toward one of her aides and whispered something. The aide's face changed, confusion, then concern. The aide whispered back, but Camilla shook her head firmly. Her jaw was set. Her decision was made. She stepped closer to James, close enough that he could hear the rustle of her coat, close enough to see the embroidery on her gloves. "Remove your helmet," she said. Her voice was calm, but it was not a request. It was a command. James did not move. He could not move. The rules were clear. A guard on duty does not speak, does not react, does not break position under any circumstances. Even for royalty. The crowd murmured. Confusion rippled through the tourists. Why was the queen speaking to a guard? What was happening? Camilla's aide stepped forward, his voice low and respectful. "Your Majesty, protocol states that." "I know what protocol states," Camilla interrupted. Her tone was sharper now. "I am asking him to remove his helmet." The aide hesitated. He glanced at James, then back at the queen. The tension was unbearable. Every eye in the courtyard was locked on this moment. James felt sweat forming beneath the thick wool of his uniform. His throat tightened. He had trained for this role for months. Discipline, duty, control. But this was different. This was something they never prepared him for. Camilla's voice softened, just slightly. "Please," she said. "Take it off." The word hung in the air. Please. From a queen. To a soldier, James's hands trembled. Slowly, against every instinct, against every rule, drilled into him. He raised his white-gloved hands to the base of his helmet. The crowd held its breath. What happened next would be talked about for years. Asterisk. James lifted the heavy bearskin helmet from his head. The weight of it left his shoulders. Cool air touched his face for the first time in hours. His dark hair was damp with sweat. His skin pale, his eyes tired. But that was not what made the crowd gasp. It was his face. Young, too young, some thought. His cheekbones were sharp, his jaw tight. But there was something else. Something in his eyes. A depth. A sadness. The kind you only see in someone who has carried a burden too heavy for their years. Camilla stared at him. Her lips parted slightly. For a moment, the practiced royal composure slipped. Just for a moment. And in that moment, everyone watching knew. She recognized him. "It is you," she whispered. James said nothing. He was not allowed to speak. But his eyes said everything. They glistened. Not with tears, not yet, but with something close. Recognition, memory, pain. The crowd was frozen. Phones were still recording, but no one understood what they were witnessing. Who was this guard? Why did the queen know him? Camilla turned to her aide without taking her eyes off James. "Clear the courtyard," she said quietly. The aide blinked. "Your Majesty?" Now, her voice was firm. Final. The aide nodded quickly and gestured to the security team. Within seconds, guards began ushering tourists toward the gates. Protests rose from the crowd. Confusion, frustration. People wanted answers. But security was gentle and unyielding. The courtyard emptied in less than 5 minutes. It was just them. Camilla, James, a handful of aides and guards standing at a respectful distance. The autumn wind swept through the empty space, carrying leaves across the stones. Camilla stepped even closer. Her voice dropped to something softer, something almost fragile. "How long have you been here?" James swallowed hard. His throat was dry. He had not spoken aloud in hours. 3 months, Your Majesty." His voice was steady, but quiet, respectful, controlled. 3 months, she repeated. She shook her head slowly, as if trying to process it. "And you did not think to." She stopped herself. Her hand rose to her chest. She took a breath. "Why?" she asked. The question was simple, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken things. James's jaw tightened. He looked down at the helmet in his hands. His fingers gripped it tighter. "I needed to prove something," he said. "To myself." Camilla studied him, her eyes searching his face for answers. "You have nothing to prove," she said softly. "I do," James replied. His voice cracked just slightly. "After everything that happened, after what I did, I needed to show that I could still serve, that I was still worthy." A heavy silence settled between them. The kind of silence that holds entire stories. Regret, forgiveness, time, lost. Camilla's aide shifted uncomfortably nearby. He did not know the details, but he could feel the weight of this moment. Whatever history existed between the Queen and this young soldier, it was deeply personal. "You were always worthy," Camilla said. Her voice was firm now, almost fierce. "You were a child. What happened was not your fault." James looked up at her. His eyes were red now. He blinked hard, fighting the emotion rising in his chest. "It felt like my fault," he said. Camilla reached out. Slowly, carefully, she placed her hand on his arm. The gesture was small, but in royal terms, it was everything. A queen did not touch a soldier on duty. Not like this. Not with such tenderness. "Your mother would be so proud of you," she said. And that was when James broke. His breath hitched. His shoulders trembled. He turned his head away, trying to hide it, but it was too late. A single tear slipped down his cheek. The secret was out, and the story behind it was more devastating than anyone could have imagined. 15 years earlier, James had been just a boy. 8 years old. Wide eyes and messy brown hair. He lived in a small village outside London with his mother, Catherine Harper. She worked as a housekeeper at one of the royal estates. Not Windsor. A smaller one, quieter, but still close enough to the crown. Catherine was kind. The type of woman who smiled at strangers and left extra food for the stray cats near the garden shed. She raised James alone. His father had left when James was too young to remember. It was just the two of them, and that was enough. Catherine loved her work. She took pride in it. She polished silver until it gleamed. She arranged flowers with careful hands. She made sure every room she touched felt warm and welcoming. The royal family never knew her name, but they lived in the comfort she created. One winter evening, Catherine was walking home from the estate. The road was dark. No streetlights. Just the pale glow of the moon on frost-covered fields. She was tired. Her feet ached. But she was thinking about James, about the drawing he had made for her that morning. A picture of the two of them holding hands. She did not see the car. It came around the bend too fast. The driver was texting, not paying attention. By the time he looked up, it was too late. The impact threw Catherine 15 feet into the ditch. The driver panicked. He stopped for only a moment, saw her lying there, saw the blood, and then he drove away. A farmer found her an hour later. She was still alive, barely. An ambulance rushed her to the hospital, but the damage was too severe. Internal bleeding, a fractured skull. The doctors did everything they could. Catherine died 3 hours later. James was at a neighbor's house when the police arrived. He did not understand at first. The officers tried to be gentle. They used soft voices. But there was no way to make the words easier. "Your mother is gone." He did not cry. Not then. He just stared at them, confused, waiting for someone to tell him it was a mistake. The driver was never caught. No witnesses. No cameras on that dark country road. The case went cold within weeks. James was sent to live with his grandmother, a bitter, distant woman who had never approved of Catherine's choices. She fed him, gave him a bed, but there was no warmth, no comfort, just silence and resentment. He grew up in that house, quiet, obedient, but inside, something hardened, a resolve, a need to prove that his mother's kindness had not been wasted, that her life had mattered, that he could honor her by becoming someone she would be proud of. At 18, he enlisted in the British Army. He worked harder than anyone else, pushed himself beyond his limits. He rarely spoke about his past. He did not need friends. He needed purpose. When he earned the position as a Queen's Guard, he felt something close to peace. This was it. This was how he would honor her, by standing watch, by protecting the very family his mother had served in her own quiet way, but he never told anyone who he was. He never mentioned his mother's name. He kept the pain buried deep, hidden beneath the scarlet uniform and the towering helmet, until today, until Camilla had seen him and remembered. Because 15 years ago, when Catherine Harper died, Camilla had heard about it. She had been Duchess of Cornwall then, not yet Queen, but she had been at that estate the week Catherine passed. She had seen the flowers Catherine arranged. She had walked through rooms Catherine cleaned, and when she learned what happened, she had sent a letter, a private letter to James's grandmother, expressing condolences, offering help if it was ever needed. The grandmother never told James. She threw the letter away, thought it was performative, royal nonsense. But Camilla had remembered Catherine's name, and now, standing in the courtyard, looking at this young man with his mother's eyes, she understood. James Harper had come full circle, and she could not let him stand alone anymore. Camilla lowered her hand from James's arm. She took a small step back, giving him space. But her eyes never left his face. She could see the boy he had been, the boy who lost everything. "Come with me," she said gently. James blinked. His breath was still uneven. "Your Majesty, I cannot leave my post." You are not leaving your post?" Camilla interrupted. Her tone was soft, but absolute. "You are being summoned by your queen. There is a difference." She turned to one of the guards standing nearby. "Have someone take his place immediately." The guard nodded and hurried off. Within moments, another soldier in full uniform stepped into position where James had been standing, rigid, silent, invisible. Camilla gestured for James to follow her. He hesitated. Every instinct told him to stay, to follow protocol, but something deeper, something human, told him to trust her. He placed his helmet under his arm and walked beside her. They entered the castle through a side entrance. The stone walls were cool and quiet. Their footsteps echoed down the long corridor. Aides followed at a distance, but Camilla waved him off. She wanted privacy. She led him to a small sitting room. It was not grand. No gold chandeliers or velvet thrones. Just a simple room with a fireplace, a few chairs, and tall windows overlooking the gardens. A place where royalty could be human for a moment. Camilla closed the door behind them. She gestured to a chair. "Sit, please." James obeyed. He sat stiffly, his back straight, his hands resting on his knees. Old habits. Military discipline. Camilla sat across from him. She removed her gloves slowly, folding them in her lap. For a long moment she just looked at him, not as a queen, but as a woman who had seen too much loss in her own life. "I remember your mother," she said quietly. She had the most beautiful smile. She once brought me tea when I was visiting the estate. I was having a difficult day. I do not even think she realized who I was at the time. But she asked if I was all right. And she meant it. James's throat tightened. He had not heard someone speak about his mother in years. Not like this. Not with warmth. She sounds like her, he said softly. That is exactly who she was. Camilla nodded. When I heard what happened to her, I was devastated. I wanted to do something. I sent a letter. I offered help, but I never heard back. James's brow furrowed. A letter? Yes, to your grandmother. James's jaw clenched. He looked down at his hands. She never told me. Camilla's expression darkened with understanding. I suspected as much. A silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but heavy. Full of things that could not be undone. I joined the guard to honor her, James said. His voice was barely above a whisper. I thought if I could serve the family she loved, it would mean something. That her life would not have been for nothing. Camilla leaned forward, her eyes intense. Her life meant everything. And not because of where she worked, but because of who she was, and because of you. James shook his head. I was just a kid. I could not protect her. I could not do anything. You were 8 years old, Camilla said firmly. There was nothing you could have done. The only person responsible for what happened is the man who drove away. James's hands curled into fists. They never found him. I know. He is out there somewhere, living his life, and my mother is gone. Camilla's face softened with sorrow. I cannot imagine that pain, but I do know this. Your mother would not want you to carry that guilt. She would want you to live, to be happy, to find peace. James looked up at her. His eyes were glassy. I do not know how. Camilla reached out and took his hand. The gesture was shocking. A queen, holding the hand of a soldier. But in this moment, she was not a queen. She was just a person who understood loss. You start by forgiving yourself, she said, and then you let people help you. James's breath shuddered. The walls he had built for 15 years were crumbling. I do not deserve help, as Camilla said. You do. And for the first time since he was 8 years old, James Harper let himself believe it. They sat in that quiet room for nearly an hour. Camilla asked about his life, his training, his grandmother. James answered slowly at first, reluctant. But with each question, the words came easier. It felt strange, talking to someone who genuinely wanted to listen. He told her about the nightmares, the ones where he was back on that dark road, where he could see his mother walking ahead of him, where he tried to scream but no sound came out, where the car appeared and he could never reach her in time. Camilla listened. She did not interrupt. She did not offer empty reassurances. She just listened. And sometimes, that was the most powerful thing someone could do. When he finished, she stood and walked to the window. The sun was setting now. The sky was painted in shades of amber and rose. The gardens below were quiet. I want to help you, she said, but I need you to be honest with me. What do you need? James stood as well. He straightened his uniform. I do not need anything, Your Majesty. I am fine. Camilla turned to face him. Her expression was kind but knowing. You are not fine, James, and that is all right. But you do not have to carry this alone anymore. James hesitated. Pride and pain wrestled inside him. He had spent so long being strong, being silent. Admitting he needed help felt like weakness. But then he thought about his mother, about what she would say if she were here. She would tell him to stop being stubborn. She would tell him to let people in. I would like to find him, James said quietly. The driver. I know it has been 15 years. I know the chances are small, but I need to know. I need to understand why he left her there. Camilla nodded slowly. I will see what I can do. I have resources, connections. If there is any way to reopen that case, we will find it. James's eyes widened. You would do that? Your mother served this family with grace and kindness, Camilla said. The least I can do is fight for justice in her name. And for you. Tears welled in James's eyes again. But this time, he did not fight them. He let them fall. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Camilla stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. "You are not alone anymore. Do you understand me?" "You are not alone." James nodded. He could not speak. His throat was too tight. But he understood. Camilla walked him back to the courtyard. The sun had fully set now. The castle was bathed in soft golden light from the lanterns. The replacement guard was still standing in James's position. Perfectly still. Perfectly silent. "Take the rest of the evening off," Camilla said. "That is an order." James smiled. Just slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty." She watched him walk away. His steps were lighter now. Still military? Still disciplined. But something had shifted. A burden had been lifted. Not completely, but enough. One of her aides approached cautiously. "Your Majesty, the press is already asking questions. There are videos circulating online. They want to know why you stopped the ceremony. Why you spoke to that guard." Camilla considered this. She could issue a statement. Something vague and official. Or she could tell the truth. "Prepare a statement," she said. "I want the public to know about Catherine Harper. About her service. About her son. And I want them to know that this family does not forget the people who serve us. Not ever." The aide nodded and hurried off. Camilla stood alone in the courtyard for a moment. The wind had picked up. It carried the scent of autumn leaves and distant rain. She thought about all the people who worked in the shadows. The housekeepers. The gardeners. The guards. The ones who made the world run, but were never seen. Catherine Harper had been one of them. And now, her son would be seen. His story would be told. And maybe, just maybe, it would remind people that every life matters. That every loss leaves a mark. And that kindness, even 15 years later, can still change everything. Inside the castle, James sat alone in his quarters. He pulled out a small photograph from his wallet. It was old, faded. His mother holding him when he was 5. Her smile was bright. Her eyes full of love. "I met the Queen today, ma'am," he whispered to the photo. "And she remembered you. She remembered you." He pressed the photo to his chest and closed his eyes. For the first time in 15 years, he felt something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. 3 months passed. Autumn turned to winter. Snow dusted the rooftops of Windsor Castle. The world moved forward, as it always did. But for James Harper, everything had changed. True to her word, Camilla had reopened the investigation into Catherine Harper's death. She pulled strings quietly. Mataphone calls. Connected detectives with old evidence. It was not easy. 15 years was a long time. Memories faded. Files were buried. But she did not give up. And then one cold December morning, there was a breakthrough. A retired police officer, cleaning out his garage, found a box of old case files. Inside was a traffic camera report from a village 3 miles from where Catherine was hit. The camera had caught a car speeding through a red light that same night. The timestamp matched. The direction matched. The license plate was blurry, but technology had improved. Forensic analysts enhanced the image, ran it through databases, and found a name. Marcus Calloway. 47 years old. A sales manager from Kent. No major criminal record. Just a man who made a terrible mistake and ran from it. The police arrested him on a Wednesday afternoon. He was at his office, sitting at his desk, eating a sandwich. He did not resist. When they told him why he was being arrested, his face went pale. He did not deny it. He just closed his eyes and nodded. James was notified 2 days later. He sat in a small room at the police station. A detective explained everything. The evidence. The arrest. The upcoming trial. Calloway had confessed. He said he had been haunted by it for 15 years. That he thought about Catherine Harper every single day. That he wanted to come forward but was too afraid. James listened in silence. He did not feel anger. He thought he would. He thought he would want to scream. to rage. But instead, he just felt tired and sad. Sad for his mother. Sad for the years lost. Sad even for Marcus Calloway, who had destroyed his own life by running. "What happens now?" James asked. "He will go to trial," the detective said. "With his confession and the evidence, it is very likely he will be convicted. He is looking at several years in prison." James nodded slowly. "Will I have to testify?" "Only if you want to. You can submit a victim impact statement instead." James thought about that. About standing in a courtroom. About looking Marcus Calloway in the eye. He was not sure he was ready. But he also knew his mother deserved to have her story told. Fully, honestly. "I will testify," James said. The trial took place in early spring. The courtroom was small. Wooden benches. High ceilings. Sunlight streaming through tall windows. James wore his military dress uniform. He wanted his mother to be proud. When it was his turn to speak, he walked to the witness stand. His hands were steady. His voice was clear. He told the court about his mother, about her kindness, her laugh, the way she hummed while she worked. He told them about the night she died, about the boy he was, about the man he had to become without her. He did not speak with hatred. He spoke with truth. And when he finished, there was not a dry eye in the room. Marcus Calloway sat at the defense table. His head was bowed. Tears streamed down his face. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, he stood. His voice shook. "I am so sorry," he said. He looked directly at James. "I was a coward. I was scared. And I ran. I have lived with that guilt every single day. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I want you to know that your mother did not suffer because she was not loved. She was. She is. And I will carry her memory with me for the rest of my life." James said nothing. He just looked at the man who had taken his mother from him, and he felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. That people make mistakes. That fear can break anyone. That holding on to hatred only hurt himself. The judge sentenced Marcus Calloway to 6 years in prison. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. It was acknowledgement. It was justice. And sometimes that had to be enough. After the trial, James stood outside the courthouse. The spring air was warm. Flowers were blooming in the nearby park. Camilla had sent a car for him. She wanted to see him. When he arrived at the palace, she was waiting in the same small sitting room. She stood when he entered. Her smile was warm. "It is over," she said softly. "Yes," James replied. "It is. How do you feel?" James thought about that. "Lighter," he said. "Like I can finally breathe." Camilla nodded. "Your mother would be so proud of you. For your strength. For your courage. For the man you have become." James's eyes glistened. "I hope so. I know so." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small envelope. She handed it to him. "This is for you." James opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter and a photograph. The photograph showed his mother standing in the gardens of the estate. She was smiling. Her hands were dirty from planting flowers. She looked happy. The letter was from Camilla. It thanked Catherine Harper for her years of service. It honored her memory. And it promised that her son would always have a place in the royal family. Not as a servant, but as someone valued, someone seen. James held the letter to his chest. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." Camilla placed her hand on his shoulder. "You are not alone anymore, James. You never will be again." And in that moment, standing in the quiet warmth of the palace, James Harper finally let go of the weight he had carried for 15 years. He let go of the guilt, the pain, the silence. He let himself heal. Outside, the world continued. Tourists took photos. Guards stood watch. Life moved forward. But inside, something sacred had happened. A queen had seen a soldier. A son had honored his mother. And a story that began in tragedy had found its way, at last, to peace.